Hey everybody, this is Paul with Collector's Escape, and today we're going to talk about books. Specifically, we're going to talk about the full collection of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries and everything written by Sir Authur Conan Doyle. Now, Sir Authur Conan Doyle was a physician, he was a writer, he was an adventurer. He lived in the period from 1858 to 1930, which was an amazing time on a lot of different fronts. He was very interested in spiritualism and supernatural things. He partook in 20 different seances. I talked about our collection of Agatha Christie books, and Agatha Christie was alive at the same time. And when she went missing, which was a Hollywood sensation, it was Authur Conan Doyle that took one of her gloves and gave it to a mystic to try to glean through the ethereal plane where she was at. So, very, very interesting stuff. One of the things that a lot of people don't know about Authur Conan Doyle is really much about his stories and his what he wrote. Most of the stuff we know about Sherlock Holmes, for instance, is from movies and other sensationalized things that are just based on the stories. He wrote a lot of different things, even adventure science fiction-y stuff. The Lost World was written by him, and most people don't know that. He wrote humor. He wrote lots of different comedy pieces, and he had other adventurous than Sherlock Holmes. When it came to Sherlock Holmes, most people know the Hounds of the Baskervilles and a few little pieces. I would recommend, if you want to start reading, for one summer, about 10 years ago, I sat down and I read all of Authur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes stories. The same 3-month period of a summer, I read all of Edgar Allan Poe. I read The Looking Glass, A Tale of Two Cities, lots of literature, because I wanted to be around it. And I found out when I read about these authors, I actually end up wanting to know all about them too, because I want to know about the mind of the people that write these stories. Now, Authur Conan Doyle, some of my favorite ones is The Red-Headed League and The Adventure of the Engineer's Thumb. Those are both two that you could pull out and read, and you won't have seen but maybe parts and pieces of these stories. And a lot of people might ask, well, why is this author that important to you? And that's because Sherlock Holmes and the character that he created has been emulated and doubled, and pieces of his ability have been used everywhere. Whether you're talking about gritty detective stories through the 40s and 50s, whether you're talking about thriller adventures, whether you're even talking about science fiction and horror, these ideas of the skills of being very observant, observing the small things that people overlook, has been taken from Sherlock Holmes. Another interesting thing to look at with Sherlock Holmes is the drug addiction issue. If you watch the new movies that come out, the TV series Elementary, which I think is awesome, they all deal with the main character, Sherlock Holmes, and his addiction in different ways. In some of the television series, they use the character and the drugs that he uses as what keeps his mind going strong, makes him better. It's like the gasoline to propel the detective to do his job. In the Authur Conan Doyle stories, one, Sherlock Holmes was a very addicted character, addicted to lots of stuff, addicted to tobacco, cigars, cigarettes, the pipe. He had a clay pipe, a briar wood pipe, a cherry wood pipe. He wrote manuals on tobacco usage. He was a connoisseur of alcohol, especially wines. And then he was a heavy user of opium, morphine, and cocaine. And you're thinking, wow, how did he even function? Or why wasn't he just, as a character in that time, kind of like today with addicts of those kind of drugs, they're sort of pushed to the side of the periphery of normality within our society. But back during the time when Authur Conan Doyle was writing about these characters, the drug world was very, very different, and these drugs were very different. There were opium dens where you could go in and smoke the hookah pipe. World War One soldiers were sent from department stores, little packs of what they called first aid. They were full of morphine and cocaine and syringes to alleviate the stress in the battlefield. And certainly Authur Conan Doyle knew about the effects of these drugs. There's no history to show that he was a drug user, but he was a physician. And he knew of these drugs. And it's interesting to contemplate whether he used these to show the shortcomings of Holmes or just the adventurous nature of Holmes in everything. Because in the Authur Conan Doyle stories, which are a little different than the movies and the television shows, most of the time Sherlock Holmes doesn't use the drugs, any kind of drugs, when he's working. When he's working, his mind is going strong, and that is what he feeds on more than the drugs. It's when he has no cases to work and he's bored that he tends to use drugs, use the different morphine and cocaine. And so it's an interesting mix. It's not sensationalized in the same way, but you find his drug usage throughout many of the stories. And so it's not something that's in one story fleeting. It's a constant dabbling addiction in the classics. And so I find these as pivotal reading if you want to understand many of the other books you're going to read. And if you read Sir Authur Conan Doyle, if you read the full collection, then you're going to see the parallels all the time. And it's not a bad thing, because you can see where people take interesting creations and they make it their own. So it's not really stealing, but it just shows you the impact and the amazing nature of the detective character created by Doyle, because his ability was far beyond others, and yet when he was asked about his ability, he would say, I simply see the little things. I see the little things that people overlook, that all the clues are right in front of you. It's elementary. And if you simply look for those clues and add them up, then your answers of the crimes and the different criminals screams at you. But because people don't look at those things, they walk on by. And they struggle, and bad guys get away. And that is the very alluring part of these stories. And they're timeless. So if you go and you read, pull up and read The Red-Headed League, or The Adventure of the Engineer's Thumb, and see if you don't find these stories that are very timed by years to be extremely exciting and just as gripping as a Tom Clancy story, or just as gripping as a Michael Crichton story. Greatness and good stories never die, and they have no time date on that. So for your collecting, get into Authur Conan Doyle and the classics, and put those into your collection. My name is Paul for Collector's Escape. We'll be talking about books again soon. Take care and keep collecting.